guys, what's up, and welcome to the But Mostly Disney podcast. I'm here with my buddy Andrew.
Hey everybody, how you doing tonight?
How's South Carolina?
Not bad. It's coastal town, so we get a little breeze, but haven't gotten to the swamp weather yet like Florida, so give it a month or two.
There you go. We're getting there as well. And I can't tell you, I've been just like waiting for Christmas for this to happen. We've got with us today a special guest, Ken Bruce, author, animator, and he's written this incredible book, Before the Birds Sang Words, and it's really the most comprehensive tome about the Enchanted Tiki Room, and he's going to tell us all about it. Ken, tell us your Disney story to start.
Oh my God! Let me see how quickly I can get this through. I was a Disney kid. My first trip to Disneyland was when I was 5. I just ate some chocolate because I want to be wired.
Yeah, good.
And now I'm worried that it's all over my face. So yeah, 5 years old. I remember that trip as being traumatic because 5 years old on the Matterhorn is not fun. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was traumatic because I wasn't steering correctly. But Small World, okay, now I'm hooked. Like, from a 5-year-old's vantage point, that was pageantry and amazing, and it blew my mind, and it etched a new, scratch in my neocortex. Later trips, I guess 7. We didn't go to Disneyland a lot, but when we went, it was a big deal. Of course, huge deal. Age 7, I went again, and that's when I saw the Tiki Room for the first time. And from a 7-year perspective, the Tiki Room was... I didn't know the tiki culture. I didn't know the jokes. I didn't know the music. All I know was this was a magic trick that was unfolding before me. I was in a house of tricks. So that stayed with me. And of course, so much about the rest of Disneyland did as well. So I grew up in Palos Verdes, where we had a lot of gray fog come in every morning. So it was literally a great childhood. So I wasn't exposed to parades and pageantry and color and theater at all. But Disneyland did that for me. So it changed me profoundly. Until later, of course, you start going to again and again to figure it all out. Brad Bird, who did my foreword, said precisely the same thing. And I still love Disneyland. I'm very critical of when they mess things up. And I write books about the things that went right and that were profoundly personal to Walt that I hope we can preserve and as we move forward. So that's kind of my Disney story in a nutshell. Hopefully that answer some questions.
No, and that's awesome. And you bring up a good point there, because look, I love Disney, right? And most of what I try not to be critical, right? That was kind of why I wanted to start this, is because I wanted to be positive, but it's impossible not to be. And that's what I actually meant to bring up off air, but I'm going to go ahead and do it live anyway. Is I saw your post about and I just couldn't help but agree with you more. I mean, and I watched these influencers. I felt like they were lying to everyone about how great it was. And your assessment was kind of dead on,
I'm cursed because I am a student of classic Disneyland. I'm in the film business, animation business. I went, I'm cursed because I went to art school for 4 years. So it's very clear when things, are visually incongruent or messy or sloppy or don't tell a story or and on or are cheap and ill-advised. And I know the reasons why, that there are some big messes at Disneyland happening right now, which I don't need to get into. It makes me very sad. Trust you me, the real Imagineers behind the scenes are quietly equally sad about all of this. So, it's not like it's not known. And it's not like they are going cheap purposefully.
Right.
They're just hiring the wrong people.
Well, and it's interesting to have, like, I mean, again, I'm not even glass half full. I'm just glad there's something in the glass kind of person, right? Like if there's anything in the glass, then I'm thrilled. And I still, obviously I trek down once a month. So except for the lobby of the Polynesian, which was a travesty. And I make sure I bring that up every show because it was so much better. It feels unimagineered, right? A little bit. And my oldest, who's also in art school, looks at the Riviera. And I look at it and think, oh, this is a cool hotel. And they look at it, Dad, it's a box with an awning. And I'm like, well,
I feel that way about the Epcot redo. When they took all the fountains and everything out. Now we have I feel like we just have a giant garden. It's cool to have a statue of Walt. We can sit by him, but you took all the imagination out of it. You put gardening and lights that don't work. Okay.
Yeah, and I worked at Epcot.
The lights were working last time I was there.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that Epcot had an idea behind it, and you fit the bricks into the structure of the idea, and now Epcot has become pretty much just land, IP land, it's not what it used to be, and I loved that organization of ideas. I mean, I worked there, so my heart was in it. So yeah, I hear you. It's hard not to be critical. Ultimately, we have no real control over any of it, and it's not like the team at Imagineering doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
Sometimes Disney hires, not Imagineering to do these things at Disneyland. They hire the crew that does the merchandise, and
Right.
moves forward with that.
But it's kind of cycled through that over the years before, right? I mean, we have these dips and highs that go back and forth, and they always seem to correct at some point in time. So
we hope so. I
Right.
hope that, I hope that the shop that is next to the Haunted Mansion now gets bulldozed and they try it again. I mean, I have no problem with a shop, but just don't make a mess of it. It can be fixed.
Right.
They have the infrastructure there. So whatever. I was hopeful, but yuck.
right.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of how we all feel. Now, do you and you went to Cal Arts, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool, right?
That was a while ago. Beginning of my career. What do you say about Cal Arts? I loved every minute of it. It was the highlight of my life, maybe. And that was just on the cusp of the animation renaissance. When I was there, everybody in the animation department, the character animation department, were like unsure about what they would be doing after they left Cal Arts. There wasn't a lot to do. But all we knew was we had found our tribe and we loved animation and we wanted to move it forward. And ultimately, that's actually what happened. So many of the Cal Arts people did exactly that. So yeah, this was on the cusp of The Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, all those things that jump-started animation into the next big classic era. Toy Story, CGI, and it was an exciting time to be there. I love that time.
And did you go? When did you work at Epcot? Before or after college?
I actually worked 2 summers while I was at Cal Arts. What a nut I was! Like when you're fearless. That was ridiculous. It's like there was an oceanarium in Palos Verdes, so I worked there a couple summers in high school, and I'm like, well, I can do better than that. I'm going to work at this new park in Florida called Epcot that hasn't opened yet. And then it opened, I'm like, I have to be somehow a part of it, and I was. It wasn't, it's putting people on rides. How many in your party? How many in your party? And then pointing them to seats. But I was so thrilled to be at this park that smelled brand new. The carpet smelled new. The roads that you took to get to, where you parked to pick up your outfit, were brand new. The park just gleamed, and I was so happy to be a part of it. So that was two summers while I was going to art school.
Wow. So again, you're living my dream. If I could have drawn, I have no artistic talent. I don't know where my kids got it. So why don't you run through your animation real quickly, and then let's get to the book, because I'm so excited to talk about this book.
Let's just get to the book. Okay, my animation career. I've worn many different hats. I've animated, I've done storyboards, I've done what's known as timing, which I'm doing right now for Family Guy. Timing is basically animation direction for overseas animators. We lay out the animation for them as a directive, so they have no reason to be creative whatsoever. So Nickelodeon on Ren and Stimpy way back when, and I directed Fairly Odd Parents, storyboards on Shrek and Toy Story 3 and Up, and Fern Gully, which goes even further back. Simpsons first season. There was a show called Invader Zim that was only on a season and a half before it was pulled, but that's kind of got a cult following. That was for Nickelodeon. And 2 Emmys for an episode of Adventure Time and Over the Garden Wall, which, Sean, you've already talked about. There's probably something I've left out. We hop from show to show all the time.
He had a hand in just about my whole childhood, so Thank you.
I had a hand in your childhood.
You're casually running through this like, oh, I just did and that was my job. And again, it's spectacular.
Well, you know what it is, and I loved every minute of it. But yeah, there's no but. I loved every minute of it.
And that led you to write a book.
Well, not really. That was like, I'm going to do something for myself. And I can't believe how I jumped into that. I was like, I can do this, and it's a big job, and I'm glad I did it. The book that, we're about to talk about, was pretty much 10 years of mulling and thinking and forming a story in my head of how I wanted to tell it, and then 6 years of writing. So from the moment I was like, I'm going to do this, to the moment the book finally came out, it was 16 years. That took a long time. But it possessed me for that long, because I love the Tiki Room, and I'd always wanted to read a deep dive. I didn't want a coffee table book. I wanted to read a deep dive on the story of how that came to be, because I knew all the way back to when I was age 7 that this attraction changed everything at Disneyland. It was, I say it over and over again, it's easily the most consequential attraction at the park. And probably the most important too, because it changed everything at Disneyland. It defined where Disneyland was going and what the park was going to be, after many years of the park not quite knowing what it was or its direction. Technologically, it was the biggest breakthrough yet. So I wanted to read that story, and then I ended up stumbling upon a treasure trove of Tiki Room ephemera from a private collection, and that's what spearheaded me to that. Yeah, that was the push that made me go, I guess I'm going to write that book that I'd always wanted to read.
Well, and I have somewhere a video. I downloaded it somewhere on the internet. That's kind of the Tiki Room story, and it's pretty good, right? I mean, it definitely goes through. It has Raleigh Crump in it, and some of these people, and it's amazing. But your book, and maybe it's the animation, and maybe it's the storyboarding background, but it reads like a novel, right?
That was the intent. So my favorite history books of all time read like a novel, where we may know instinctively where this is going, but while we're reading, we're thinking, I don't know how we're going to get there at this point. One of the biggest compliments I received on the book was from a friend who was like, I'm halfway into the book, or 3/4 into the book, and the Tiki Room is still a restaurant. And I'm like, yes, I did my job. Right. No, it should read like a novel, and writing that way is difficult. Because history doesn't necessarily flow like a clean story. So I had to do a lot of crafting to be true to the history, but again, leave you hanging, like, how is this going to get resolved? And there was lots and lots of things to resolve in the Tiki Room story. It was not just, I can dream it, I can do it, and boom, the Tiki Room was formed. It evolved from a lot of uncertainty and back and forth, and Walt was making it up as he went.
Right.
He didn't
Right.
know. Yeah, he didn't know where this. It started as a little idea, and then just kept getting weirder and daffier, and so I don't know where we started with that question, but
No.
yeah, no, I wanted it to read like a piece of storytelling, because it is. It's a really interesting story,
And it really is. It really is great. Great. Like, I'm trying to think. Hunt for Red October. That guy. I can't. What was his? I can't.
Someone said the book read to them like All the Right Stuff, which was a
Yeah.
movie but a novel before that. The idea of all of these disparate, crazy pieces coming together to do, and a lot of people tasked with doing something that they'd never done before, which is pure Tiki Room. Like virtually everyone on there were given jobs to do that they didn't even know where to start, and they all privately thought, "Why me?" But they still got it done. They still figured it out. So yeah, to get something that miraculous up and running, and in 1963, don't you doubt for a second, the Tiki Room was a masterstroke, a technological breakthrough. It was everything. It was utterly new. It was like the Artemis project. It was like launching a missile for the first time. No one had seen anything remotely like it. So a lot of technological hurdles had to happen, and a lot of showmanship and calculated surprises had to be concocted. So yeah, so these people that all came together were doing something they absolutely had never done before. Yeah.
Yeah. Which seems to be, in what I've read of Walt, a common theme for him, right? Is taking play people where they're, comfortable, and then yanking them out and putting them somewhere else that seems like they shouldn't belong, Extensio writing music and songs, which made no sense. And then he did it. But
yeah, Walt. Yeah, they would say Walt. Perhaps maybe Walt's one undeniable bit of genius was knowing how to cast people, but and knowing what they could do without them even knowing what they could do. There's so many heroes. Everyone in it is a hero that I write about is a hero to me. But someone like Wathel Rogers bubbles up to the surface because Wathel was an animation, and all his connection to say mechanical creatures was that he liked to play with mechanical toys as a kid and then build them later in his life. This was something he did on his own. Walt knew that, and when it came time to fill the park with mechanical creatures, some in the Jungle Cruise, some in Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland, and then later the Tiki Room. Wathel was given that job, and I know, Wathel was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you've just asked me to put on a presentation in a restaurant at the time of a bunch of mechanical singing birds. Where do I start? I don't know what. But okay, Walt. I guess I'll try. I'll do it.
Right.
You believe in me, so I'll give it a go. And then from that, miracles happen.
It's so amazing. And, the book is such a journey, and we'd already kind of talked about it before we went on air, but we've all, I think, heard the Disney lore of the little mechanical bird from Los Angeles, or from New Orleans, sorry. But to go back further to Walt being in the Army and the Strasbourg anatomical clock and that rooster, somehow you found that research that he'd thought enough about it that it made it through to us, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there happen. If you're going to say, yeah. So I liken the. There's a lot of mythology around almost everything Disney. The Disney fans start a story, they hear something, and then it just becomes truth after a couple months of people just telling it. And there's so much mythology around, again, Disney, and certainly around the Tiki Room. And I felt it was my job to set the record straight. And a lot of these stories are really cute and heartwarming. Stories like, Walt picks up a mechanical bird and voila, somehow the Tiki Room is born. That could be farther from the truth. There is a connection between that bird and animatronics. But if you're going to call out that bird, which everybody calls an antique, but quite frankly, it probably wasn't, because the company that made them continued to make them through the 60s. And they weren't just in New Orleans and antique stores. They were at Knott's Berry Farm. You could buy them in many places. So, no, it didn't happen that way. But I will argue until I'm out of breath that the actual story, which is far more complex and maybe not as heartwarming and gettable, is so much more interesting. And part of that is tracking back. Well, if you're going to say that bird had something to do with it, Walt had a fascination with mechanical things of all kind, and that can trace back to when he was 17 in the Army Corps, driving an ambulance around France. He was tasked at that age with telling VIPs who were coming in where what sites they might be able to see, and Walt was totally in tune with this astronomical clock. You call it an anatomical clock,
sorry,
which I guess is probably a little anatomical. An astronomical clock at the Strasbourg Cathedral in France, because it had that clock came to life at noon every day, and a bunch of sort of automatons would march out and put on a little mini presentation, and then at the end, a mechanical rooster at the top of it would crow. So I bring that clock up, and certainly that rooster, which ends up being, as far as we know, probably the oldest, at least the one in the Decorative Arts Museum across the street. There's a replica in the church there now, in the cathedral there now. Probably ends up being the oldest mechanical automaton that survives. So, Walt was totally into those mechanical things of all kinds, and it shows up in his movies, Pinocchio and Silly Symphonies, and that magic of something that is supposed to be inanimate coming to life. That traces right on through to animation, which is a series of drawings that are static that come to life. So, Walt loved that magic, and that's kind of where I start the book. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, the first bird got hit by lightning, didn't it? The rooster?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it got hit by lightning. They switched it out, but I believe the one that got hit by lightning you can see it in a museum across the street.
Oh, cool. Okay. I thought it might have been the story.
Yeah, so it still exists because metal. It was all metal.
Right.
It was a lovely conductor.
And that's the thing, is that like each chapter, fades out, and there really is it really is a nail biter for me at every chapter, because
that's a huge compliment.
Well, it makes it hard to put it down, right? My wife's like, "Can you turn the light out? We got to go to bed." But you connect that, with his love of the miniatures, and
yes. And his love of miniatures and dioramas is a much more honest connection to the Tiki Room and Disneyland than that little mechanical bird, for sure.
Right, which is really cool. And then I know you commented, but I did a quick reel when I was at Hollywood that Xanadu Pacific Theater is where he actually displayed Granny's cabin, which is kind of cool. How that just a little weird Walt connection. I love those little pieces.
Yeah, he didn't want to go in because he didn't want really because he was a kid. Like, he wasn't a kid, but that was one of the biggest revelations in the book, and in writing about Walt and the road to Disneyland and the Tiki Room, is that he had all the insecurities that we do. This was something he built from his own hands, and he was petrified of people not really responding to it the way he hoped. He didn't go into the Pan Pacific. It was not they did do theatrical shows there, but it was an auditorium. It was just a big, huge football field size slab of cement, so they could shape it any which way they wanted. But he debuted it at a California design exposition, and he didn't go in. He hid in what Cantor's across the street, and had his buddy Harper Goff go in there and just report back to him what people were saying. So he was shy and insecure, and you have to remember, Granny's Cabin and the series of dioramas that he started, that was his own personal project, because he had something to prove. He hadn't drawn or created much at all. He was a studio boss, so this was a chance for him to put his own work out there and his own expression of his childhood through these dioramas he was building. So yeah, the Pan Pacific, which has long since burned down, there, when you walk into, I think it's about California Adventure in the Hollywood studios, you'll see these fin-shaped towers that were in the front of the Pan Pacific Auditorium, and though they aren't technically a connection to his, one night of anxiety showcasing Granny's cabin for the first time, it's nice to think that they might be a little homage. I like to think so. So
I do too. And plus, you can, Xanadu, as even though some people have rated it the worst movie of all time, it's actually one of our family's favorites.
I saw it for the first time recently, and I cannot say that I was not entertained
I
from
love it.
beginning to end.
I haven't seen it. I got to watch it.
We watch it.
It's a mess, but it is
Yes.
it is a mess with a smile on its face.
That's exactly right. I think it was something I watched as a kid when I was sick one time, and it made me feel a little better, and so it's always kind of had a place. I like. There were some stories in the book, and I'm trying carefully not to give it all the way because I want everybody to read it. And there's so much, but I feel like I want to leave lots of surprises. But some of the stories you told about Walt, I thought really made him much more human.
Absolutely, yeah.
Than I'd heard before. I never thought about Walt worrying or being concerned. He was just the guy who's like, oh, my brother will find the money. We'll figure it out. Here's my house. Here's my car. Here's my life insurance policy. I don't care. It's all going to work. But there were some stories you told about him that really made me feel better about my own endeavors and my own insecurities, that kind of thing, that he felt that way too,
He was absolutely human. And in fact, the Disney Family Museum and, Diane's sort of gift to the Presidio was very much in tune with this idea of like, kids, stop deifying my dad. He was human. He struggled. He was insecure. He felt like he had something to prove. Seeing him through that lens is far more interesting and revealing and empowering to the rest of us as well. He has become a deity to so many. The Disney fan universe is kind of feeling a little culty these days.
Right.
Walt is like, you bring up Walt and they start crying. It's you really want to know Walt, you gotta dig into his humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. I mean, I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed, because your book also gave a lot of different history lessons. And so I love tiki culture. I think it's really, really cool. Yeah. I haven't decorated my house yet or anything, but we go to Key West every year. I used to live there. And so we go down with the family every year. And this year we're going to stop by the Mai Kai, which you mentioned.
That's on my bucket list. I did a deep dive on the Mai Kai, and thank God it's back.
It looks amazing. So we're actually going to plan our travel this year to go down there. And then I thought it was really cool. You mentioned Mutiny on the Bounty and the Hurricane, the 1937 movie. And little story. I don't know that anyone cares, but my great grandfather was in Pago Pago in the Navy, and he was stationed there in 1936. And so I have a photo album of his pictures from there, and it's kind of National Geographic, topless Polynesian women. But there's also a grass tiki hut that's Samuel Gold, before it was MGM, before it was Metro Goldwyn Mayer, just Samuel, his casting office, and they were casting for the Hurricane while he was there, and the director.
There you go. Wow.
And he became good friends. Really cool connection in the book to the tiki stuff. Because I hadn't thought about the tiki going back that far. I always think of tiki culture in the 50s, maybe the 60s, kind of postmodern,
right.
And
I broke it into two chapters. Actually, it was going to be one chapter, and I'm like, this is not one chapter. Because there were kind of two phases. There was the sort of tropical hideaway era, which was pre-World War II, because there were a lot of like little tropical themed establishments, and then the tiki movement, which was a whole other thing that was based on GIs returning from the war, and the South Pacific, the book in South Pacific, the musical, the Romance of the South Seas, and the tiki expedition. So all of a sudden that tiki icon becomes very prevalent and very much a part of this new kind of much more goofy, cartoony, exotica, phase of it. So yeah, yeah, and both of those stories are fabulous. So those movements, preordained the existence of something in Adventureland that would tip its hat to that sort of goofy, eccentric, visually iconic era.
Well, I mean, and there's little things. I didn't know that at World War One, Hawaiian music was the number one type of music in the country. Like it was.
Yeah, no, either.
And Cliff Edwards from Pinocchio.
Yeah, I had to stop and read what? So yes, Hawaiian music in the I think it was 30s. It's most popular American music. Most popular music listened to in America, huh?
Right.
Well, a lot of that had to do with this radio show called I don't want to like Aloha Hawaii. Like all of a sudden I don't know what the name was. I have a feeling it was that.
It'd be a great show.
Aloha something, and it came live from live from Hawaii because all of a sudden we had technology to like let people in the continental U.S. listen to music that was being broadcast, or show that was being broadcast from Hawaii. What? So people were ape blank over Hawaiian music in the 1930s. Yeah,
and I don't think anyone that I've ever
or Polynesian, but it was
Polynesian, but I've never heard anyone talk about. Walt loved South America. Obviously, when he went down there for that trip, and he loved New Orleans, but he loved the South Seas. I mean, he spent a lot of time over there. And Lieutenant Robinson,
he loved traveling, he loved traveling in general. Yeah, but he did love the South Seas. Yeah,
I mean, Lieutenant Robinson Crusoe, which is I love Dick Van Dyke, so one of my favorites. Really, I mean,
which is actually an awful movie. It's called Lieutenant Robin Crusoe. Believe it or not, I kept getting that wrong myself. Which the idea was his, and then the movie was not well received, and he was thrilled that he actually hid his name in there, and you couldn't really tell it was his idea. It's a mess of a movie.
It is, but it still brings a smile to my face. I'm pretty easy to. And then Jiminy Cricket played ukulele. George Bruns. I mean, he was in a Hawaiian band at one point in time.
Yeah, I think he was part of the Royal Hawaiians. Yeah, so the love of Hawaiian music was very much a palpable thing in America for decades. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. I love
one thing. Go ahead.
I love the idea too that Enchanted was added because there was already a Tiki Room restaurant in Pennsylvania
or something. Either the bowling alley or something. Yeah,
right.
Just add Enchanted and what a perfect The word enchanted in Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room is the most important word in it. So I can't believe it was not there, because it really was a space that was, for newbies, absolutely enchanted. Like, this room is alive. This room has been imbued with some sort of spiritual energy.
Right.
So enchanted was the perfect word to choose. But the Enchanted Tiki Room, Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, had 20 different names from its inception to its completion. It never knew what it was going to call itself until the very last minute.
And what a crazy last minute it was, right? Because I think most of us have probably heard the conversation of Walt saying you can't have birds in here; they're going to poop on everything, and everybody's going, no, Walt, it's going to be mechanical birds. It feels like they're kind of making it up as they go along.
Oh no, it doesn't feel that way. It was true. This was John Hench, and he was making this up. All he had done was just sort of kind of for decorative purposes, he put in his first interior sketch of the Enchanted Tiki Room. Just some birds. He didn't think anything beyond the fact that it just made the painting he just did look kind of adorable. That's all he was thinking. So Walt was way ahead. Walt, ever the pragmatist, was like, why are you putting birds in here? This is a restaurant. They're going to poop in the food. He didn't use the word poop, I assure you.
Right.
And John Hench, just wanting to please his boss, he just started to make stuff up. He was like, oh, no, Walt. Again, trying to please his boss. They're not real birds. We're just going to do some stuffed birds. And then Walt had a fit over that because there's a long story related to the fact that Walt was absolutely against any sort of taxidermy of any kind. So he's like, we don't do taxidermy here. And again, John was like, oh, well, he's backing, rowing the boat backwards. And he was like, oh, no, 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 no. Okay, they're going to be mechanical birds. And again, he hadn't thought of any of this till the meeting. And that's when Walt lit up. Walt already knew that mechanical birds could work. They were working on a show that didn't come to be that was going to have mechanical birds. So mechanical birds were already being worked on in one way or another for another show, this Chinese restaurant dinner show. And Walt was like, oh, yeah, that could work. And then someone brought up the idea, probably Walt. It's like, well, wait a minute. If we put a whole bunch of birds in here, they could do a thing, not a performance, not a show, but they could do a thing. People are eating and all of a sudden one bird tweets and then another bird answers the call. And then, oh, wait a minute. That became like, well, wait a minute. We can do kind of a little jam session where all of a sudden they're kind of maybe doing a tweeted musical song people sort of kind of can reference. And then from there, month after month, that idea just kept getting more audacious and daffy and weird until it became ultimately Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, where every damn thing in the room came to life.
Which I love. I love the idea too, that you also told some stories, and again, not to be negative, but I enjoyed kind of hearing the Imagineers fight a little bit. Like, I think it was Mark Davis and John Hench fighting over the colors. One wants earth tones, the other one
fighting for colors, and John Hench having his own. Like when John Hench found out that Walt was like, we're not going to do the restaurant anymore for various reasons. We all think of one reason, but it's not quite completely true. And that one reason is, well, the show had outgrown a restaurant. That is true, but Walt was also having issues with the restaurant management, and wanted them out. It was already about ready to fire them anyway. So
Stouffer's, right? That's the
yeah Stouffer's. Yeah, they had already had a year in on the neighbor restaurant, two neighbor restaurants, and it was not going well. So I don't know what my point was. Where were we?
Now you know how I feel all the time. So I started.
Oh well, yeah. So yeah, it was a restaurant show, a restaurant happening for a very, very long time, and then eventually it became, for various reasons, a full-on show. And to actually, John Hench hated when Walt said, "We're not going to do this as a restaurant anymore." John Hench quietly had a fit. He was like,
"I bet."
He was like, "I've been working on this as a restaurant, and you're telling me." And you're telling me we're not doing that anymore? Wrong, bad idea, awful. I hate it, and he hated it. He hated it until the day he died. He thought, tapping the birds awake with a tap of a stick, as opposed to you're eating and then it starts to happen. Hated it, and he also hated the opening. He hated the opening number as well. He wanted that gone because he thought it slowed everything down. Eventually, he got his wish. They did remove what would have eventually been the number that opened the show, which was the Barcarolle, an Offenbach number. I wish they could bring it back because they could do great things with it in 2025.
Right. Well, I can't imagine sitting in there and having, like you're saying, John Hench put his life into it, and then Walt going in, hey, take the tables out. And we just got these. They just got in. No, let's get rid of it and see. But
John was like, you can't. Yeah, I mean, obviously he was wrong. John was like, you can't change your mind. You can't go one direction and just change your mind and go this whole new direction without screwing it up. Of course, everybody that's found the Enchanted Tiki Room enchanting and beloved disagree. But, he'd been working on it for months and months and months, and, he got the rug pulled out from under him. So I get it.
Well, it wasn't a bad idea. There was just maybe a better idea, right? 900 people for...
Well, it wasn't like, what the Enchanted Tiki Room before it was when Walt said, let's turn this into its own attraction. There was work to be done because it wasn't a quote unquote show. It didn't have MCs. It didn't have an opening number that told everybody what the heck they'd come there for. It didn't have jokes. It didn't really have much chatting. It was just a 3-act series of 3 songs that unfolded while you were eating, and then you were done. So there was a lot of hard work that went into, well, if it's not a happening, if it's not a piece of performance art and it's a show, well, we have to do a lot of work to shapeshift it into something that people recognize as some sort of vaudeville burlesque unfolding, which is a huge part of the story.
Well, and I would have loved to seen the reaction he had to when he brought the Sherman Brothers in, and I can't remember the other guy's name off the top of my head, but the guy just looked at him and said, "What is this, Walt? What is this thing?" You know?
Yeah. They were seeing the show before it was a show. They were seeing it when it was a restaurant happening, and it was surreal and weird and confusing and sinister. I use that word an awful lot. Like, imagine you're sitting there eating, and then the birds do this, and the birds do that, and then the flowers do this, and then all of a sudden, the tiki gods that appear to be incredibly angry start yelling at you, basically. And then there's a giant bolt of lightning and rain, and then the lights come up, forks down, napkins folded, you're done with your meal, bye. That's what it was. And that's the show, that's the presentation that the Sherman Brothers and Larry Clemens saw. Larry Clemens was the guy who was going to write the really awful jokes that you hear throughout the Enchanted Tiki Room opening number, the Tiki 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 Room song. And at the end, they were like, who's going to speak first? And Larry was the one that opened his mouth first and was like, Walt, what is this? Like, what is this? Because it made no sense. And it was, again, kind of frightening as it unfolded. So that's where the Sherman Brothers came in. That's where Larry Clemens, the jokester, came in. That's where Wally Bogue came in, who had already started to work on creating kind of an MC'd solid three-act structure with jokes and at least, one parrot that was going to set the stage. So, yeah, so that was a interesting time in the history of the Enchanted Tiki Room, for sure.
Now, I try very, very hard, and then I still end up doing it because I hate the what would Walt do kind of thing, because I don't think any of us, like, I've talked to other people who are like, Walt was not sentimental. He was the first person to get rid of something if it wasn't working. You know, he had a true vision for his park in that way. You know, and in your book, you mentioned that, you know, this is it for now, but it'll change at some point in time. And gosh, that's just almost blasphemous to some of us. You know, do you think and I know they already have tried, but they've always come back to the beginning. I mean, do you think the Tiki Room is untouchable at this point?
I would say it's museum worthy. You know, a lot of old school Imagineers would have always said, Disneyland is not a museum. It needs to constantly shapeshift, and Walt was certainly behind it. If Walt were still alive, the Tiki Room probably wouldn't be there anymore. That said, what if something at a theme park happens to be so important in the history of not just that theme park, but all theme parks across the world, internationally? What if it's one of the last things remaining that is truly Walt? This is something Walt created. What if Walt is an artist, he creates a work of art that happens to be at a theme park? Do you take it down? So that's the big what if. I think it is, though it has been touched with, it's a masterwork. And I think it's in the world of Disney, in the world of theme parks, it should be primarily left alone. It is a dimensional reflection of Walt and his instincts. He is all over it. His sensibility, what made him laugh, what delighted him. It's all there. So untouchable. Yes. You can take it out, but then put it somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I worry, about is it that important? Yeah, it's that important. Yeah.
I think you take that and the Carousel of Progress and you put them together. Those are both things that Walt touched that you don't mess with. And change anything else. That's history.
Yeah, it is history. You know, it has gone in and out of relevance for sure. It is corny as heck, but
I love it.
but something should remain at Disneyland that that gets us gets us that is respected as a piece of pop culture artistry that Walt Disney supervised. And it wasn't just, this was not a passing attraction for him. He called it his baby for a reason. He was all over it. This really was a reflection of the things that lit him up, that got him excited. So yeah, or if you're going to take it down, if you want to make a turn it into a stroller parking lot, maybe go ahead, but it needs to reopen somewhere else, and be available for people who want to see it, see a piece of Walt, pure Walt.
I couldn't agree more. And you know what? Look, even if you took that out of it, it serves a great person. It gets rid of several thousand people a day to move through there, a little bit of air conditioning, right? At least for us in Florida. Now, I will say, and my East Coast people might kill me, I actually like Disneyland's version better.
Well, it's because it is better. Sorry. Right. It's a more intimate space. And, yeah, you're right. It feels up close and personal. The benefit of extra land and extra space in Florida was lovely, but the Imagineers had forgotten that just because you can make a bigger space doesn't mean you're actually doing service to the actual show. At Disneyland, you are hugged by the Tiki Room. You can practically touch them. In Florida, the space is huge and a little bit more airy and spacious, and something about the intimacy is lost. So one in Florida's fine, but yeah, that's not Walt's. Walt's and no fountain back here in Anaheim.
The fountain in the middle makes it for me. Like, I just love that fountain because and that seems like such an important part of any Tiki Room, right? Is to have the fountain.
They had that Enchanted fountain in Florida, and they took it away when they redid it for I guess it was for
Yago.
Yeah, for Yago, whatever. And then they didn't put it back. For God's sake, put it back. They have the infrastructure, they have the machinery. Put the Enchanted fountain back. Now it's just mist that comes up. It's like, kids, at least put that back, for God's sake. Don't know why they haven't.
So speaking of things, I don't remember, and we haven't been to California in a while. Do they still have the Mylar out there instead of the real rain, or did they do? And that looks much better.
Yeah, it still looks great. Still looks absolutely great.
I think they should have kept that. Now I'm going to have to look it up and see exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. I believe it's actual water in Florida, but who knows? Maybe
it is. It's actual water.
Yeah. It's like, what?
Which is neat.
You can't even see it.
Right, but you cannot see it. You can see the drips after it's done, which is
yeah.
And it's funny, the little things. I watch them in the Japan Pavilion at Epcot. The little I don't want to try to. I don't care. Mispronounce the shishi adoshi, the little fountains to scare the deer away. The bamboo that comes down. So I love that Enchanted Garden at Disneyland as much as I like the big waterfall, and I think the pre-show for Disney for Tiki Room in Florida is good, but I really like that garden out there. It makes me really happy.
Yeah, I go back and like the idea of walking into a room and then again, for jettisoning ourselves back to 1963, the idea of walking into a room and seeing birds come to life was just like, what? So come Florida, they actually put a pre-show of two birds yammering. So that, for me, diminishes the surprise of seeing this room full of birds that, as far as we know, are taxidermy coming to life. So I had a little bit of an issue with that, but whatever. It's a minor.
It is, but no pun intended, a minor. Sorry, bad bird joke.
A minor bird.
One thing I thought was cool in the book, my grandfather was a huge Bing Crosby fan. So to read the animatronic part when he gets I can do this in the studio and record on this film. And then they took that and then with magnetic tape, and then they're sitting there trying to figure out what to come up with this name for audio animatronics. Is it animatronics? And Walt, I think, if I remember correctly, he pronounces it incorrectly.
Oh, I don't know. I just know that if you're talking about Bing Crosby, it was shocking how many times his name came up in my research.
Right.
for various reasons. One of them, I mean, yes, there's a little ode to Bing Crosby because there's a crooning bird, and it is an homage to Bing Crosby
Yeah.
for a brief moment. But that said, Bing Crosby was the cornerstone American entertainer of his day, beloved. He was on the radio and in film, and he was everywhere. He was American entertainment royalty. But that said, how many of the people that sung for the Tiki Room had a connection with him? And then beyond that, the very fact that had there been no Bing Crosby, there would have been probably no, at least certainly in 1963, no Enchanted Tiki Room, because Bing Crosby was the number one champion for magnetic tape.
Yep.
He was the one that was introduced to it after we stole the technology from the Germans after World War II. And he was like, we can make something of this. We can actually, I'm doing a radio show. I could do the radio show, and then we could edit that magnetic tape and make for a much more propulsive show. And then not only that, if we record it, then I don't have to do the show multiple times for different time zones. So he wasn't just like, this is a great idea for me. He started the Ampex company, which is the cornerstone magnetic tape manufacturer. And so his foresight put magnetic tape recording technology front and center, which, of course, led to many things in the Enchanted Tiki Room, because the Tiki Room was recorded primarily on magnetic tape. The pulse tech that animated the birds. It wasn't just the audio, it was also the animation cues for the birds. So, yeah, Bing Crosby kept coming up time and time again. I was just amazed. He really was a huge, huge influence in American culture back then, for sure.
Yeah, and he's obviously, I mean, a household name, but that's unbelievable. I've never heard that story either. And is that the same tape that the Polaris missile system that you think of? We were launching birds and missiles.
Yeah, Polaris was a 1-inch tape, so I don't know, or they could cram a whole bunch of different tones on there to run the show. But yeah, absolutely, it's the same material. Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah, and it is wild.
I thought I just keep thinking of things like there was a perhaps going to be a Bette Midler version of there. They were thinking about really changing it and putting that in there with the giant
again, the shows
frog.
come in and out of relevance. Thank God for the 1990s, when all of a sudden there was this resurgence of interest among, I don't know, the music aficionados, punk rock and elsewhere, with bachelor pad music, like the exotica music of the 1950s era, 1950s bachelor era. So in bringing in this resurgence of love for that definitely tweaked into the tiki culture, which now is still going strong. So the Tiki Room, which is about to pretty much be bulldozed, they were thinking about other ways of bringing it to life. There was a Bette Midler, and the Touchstone brand was a huge thing back in the whatever, and they were going to do a Bette Midler hosted Vegas review Tiki show, and then and that didn't happen, and then the Lion King became a thing, so they're like, let's turn the Tiki Room into a Lion King show, and that didn't happen, and then just at the right time, I'm like, wow, this Tiki culture, this is coming back. I guess the Tiki Room should stay. Close call, for sure. And it's still going strong today. Yeah. People have recognized it for the kind of mid-century masterwork it is, the little tiki. And, the tiki culture pretty well died out. So to see authentic sort of tiki establishments, whether they serve alcohol or not, to actually be able to go and visit something that is still around, that's incredibly rare. And the Tiki Room survived the demise of the tiki culture that Vietnam era Americans were thumbing their nose at, saying it was absolutely uncool. So all of these tiki establishments started to just go under. But the Tiki Room at Disneyland has survived.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
The book really brings together so when I was a kid, I loved Walt. I loved Walt Disney. I loved those Sunday nights like everybody else, getting through Lawrence Welk to finally get to something you enjoyed. And then, my family and I started going when the kids were little, almost by accident. And it really grew into something that my wife and I love together and the kids and I love together. I've got one kid, going to Pixar this summer. The other one is in school in Florida in an engineering program, and he wants to work at Disney. It's really become something that, look, not everything I have is Mickey Mouse, but I do love. But what I really love is
Sean. Are you one of the cult members?
No, not well, maybe, but I'm cult adjacent, right? I have other.
Do you have
interests.
a Walt statue with candles around it, Sean?
No, I don't. But I do have his head in the closet in a freezer, so I'm saving that for when we can reanimate.
Oh wait, that's not Disney World under the steps.
But I love, in reading, and just like my friend Blith was saying in the that how many. It's not just an attraction. It's not just dumb birds, singing silly things and saying funny things. And when you really look at that and the Carousel of Progress and the People Mover, and, I love Bob Gurr, I love reading. I love listening to him. I'm wearing his shirt right now. And just that spirit that I wonder, I feel like we lack a lot of times is what brings me and really, kind of drags me into Walt's cult, for lack of a better word, because I really enjoy learning these things that, because it's deep. It goes really, 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 you can get so far into it, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I want to quickly, because this is really important, I want to put the Tiki Room in context. The Tiki Room opened when there was no Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion or Carousel of Progress or Small World or Lincoln. All that was not there. We had, the big attractions were Jungle Cruise, Matterhorn, and the submarine ride. So this was an audacious space-age breakthrough, and people that went back in 1963 literally had a jaw-dropping experience. So it's that important. People didn't know what they were seeing. It was one surprise after another. They were convinced that the rain shower at the end was real. But beyond that, it's again super personal attraction to Walt, and because and since Walt had his fingers all over it, and it was his own money. It was also the first attraction he put his own name to. It's kind of, again, as things start to get taken apart and taken away at Disneyland, it has become one of the few, again, last real reflections of Walt the man. I argue at the end, Charles Schultz, the guy who created Peanuts, would always say, if you really want to know me, read my strip. It's all there. That's me. And I will argue that the Tiki Room is that as well. You want to know Walt, you go to the Tiki Room. Again, it's a tiki show with a lot of exotic birds, and that's not necessarily what I'm talking about in relationship to Walt's sensibility. But what's there is Walt's love of vaudeville shtick and the jokes and the music, which he was absolutely into, and the pacing and the and his love of mechanicals and miniatures and his absolute love of being able to put an audience in a space and surprise them with one magic trick after another. It's when you go to when you go to the Tiki Room, Walt's sitting right next to you with a big grin on his face thinking, you're going to love this. This is going to blow you away. I can hardly wait to show this thing to you. Even out of context, you may not like the Mona Lisa, or you may not like, you may not like the Mona Lisa, but it is still undeniably a work of art. So respect must be paid. That's the Tiki Room today. So, part of the reason for writing the book was to remind people how important it is, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's funny or clever. It's definitely clunky. There are other rides and attractions that are infinitely more complex, but this is personal. So, and I'm reminding people in the 300 and some odd pages, why? I think it's a great story.
It is.
It was a very good
It
story.
is, and it's there's a reason that we never miss it. Not once. Not once have we taken a trip to the Magic Kingdom and not gone into the Tiki Room.
Well, Sean, you need to get to Disneyland.
Oh, I do. I've never been.
Yes, look at that guy. He's never been.
Never been to Disneyland.
And I've said this before, I love history I can touch, right? Like, so we live in Virginia where the Battle of the Ironclads was, and I've stood right next to the turret of the Monitor. It's just so wild to see it right there in front of me. And I felt the same way standing on those tracks.
You
at
could have had
Disneyland.
Disney's America, and you said no.
So close. It was so close. And you know what they have there now? Like apartments in a shopping mall.
Of course they do.
They fought for that. Like I don't know. That's not Disney's fault, at least.
Ken, they so wanted that.
Where can we tell us a little bit more where we can find your stuff and where we can buy the book?
Oh, it's all, well, I can send you a copy myself if you want, but it's on Amazon. The book is on Amazon. It's in its second printing, so I think that's what you would get if you order it, because I was able to go back into the book and make some few minor adjustments. So Amazon is where you can get it. It's also available on Kindle. My website is up there right now, tikiroom63.com. That's easy to remember.
Yes.
If you forget what the number was, it's just the year that the attraction opened. And the Audible book is finished and will be released sooner than later, so keep looking for that. I'm also on Instagram. I think the Instagram link is on my website. I don't know what it is here, but I'm constantly putting things up on Instagram that are fun and kooky that are related to the book. So, yeah. But you can find it instantly on Amazon.
I think it's Tiki.
And get it. It's a really, really, I'm not just saying it because I wrote it.
It's awesome.
But
it's a great book.
In writing it, I was like, this is something that no one talks about, and it's really great stuff. And it's a very human story about Walt and the making of that attraction. So,
and you are Tiki Room 1963 on Instagram. I should have thought to put that.
Am I? I don't even know.
So.
Okay, I guess I am.
That's you.
Or is it Tiki Room 1963 or Tiki Room 6? I don't even know.
I think it's 1963. Or just Ken Bruce. Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, I'm not just saying it because you're here. It's just, it's a great book. It's a historic novel, and it really is easy to read. You know, I mean, for the amount of detail you go into, I just couldn't put it down. And like Andrew, I will probably read it again, and I will probably buy the audio version.
I will too.
Just because there's so much stuff in here that, I mean, even, Lou Mangello might not know, and he wrote a trivia book, I mean, there's some nuggets in here I've never heard anywhere. So
it was, I met a whole new Walt and just doing a deep dive on that one attraction. It was super fun. So thank you for reading the book, and thank you for championing it. Thank you so much. Like, that's really sweet. There's one other thing I was going to say. I forgot. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being you.
Well, cool, man. Again, you've been so generous with your time. Anytime you want to come back and talk to us, please feel free.
Anytime you want me, I'll come back.
Right, cool.
You throw me whatever you want.
Yeah, I won't wait for you to write another book. We'll have you on again. It'd be great. That's like.
Why are you Tater, Sean? I
have told this story before, but I will tell it again. It's just a nickname I got in high school for we were at a church camp retreat, and we were people bowling in the hallway, and I rolled a gutter ball. So people would line up like pins, and we'd roll a basketball down the hall. And I rolled a gutter ball, and the movie Some Kind of Wonderful had just come out with Eric Stoltz. And in the movie, his younger sister calls him the human tater tot. My buddy called me that one time, and it stuck all the way for the last 40 years of my life. And so And
then I have one more question,
yes.
Sir Tater. You just came back from a pretty extensive and detailed trip to Disney World.
Oh, we had a
Share.
great time. I mean,
Like, what were you doing? You were like rating. Drinking fountains,
so
for God's sake.
again, that is the magic of the internet. Is that when I decided to try? So Lou Mongello from WW Radio, who I really need to connect you with, he's a fascinating guy. He does this thing called Momentum,
Please do.
right? And it's about turning your passion into your business. And while I'm not necessarily money oriented, it's expensive to go to Disney. So I thought, well, I'm already taking these pictures. I enjoy this. Why not? I'm going to give it a crack. A friend of my wife's had actually said she really enjoyed my social media. Thought I was, oh, he's funny and he's and positive, if nothing else.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, like super fun.
So about a year and a half ago, I thought, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. But I'm trying to stay relevant, and so my goal is to post 2 reels a day and then 1 long form video on Sundays. And so I needed something to post, and I found a very cold water fountain, and so I posted it, and people liked it. So I started looking at other water fountains. So now every time I go buy a new water fountain, I take a quick video and rank it and post it. It's such a weird, it wasn't meant to be anything. It was just something to film, and
you get high marks for originality. That's
very bizarre.
Good.
It was kind of a throwaway, and now I have a graphic, and my buddy watches them all. And
you weirdo, you
absolutely
weird
very strange.
weirdo.
So I fit right into Disney people, right? Which is why I like the people I've met here. I mean, we've met it's a very overall a very nice culture, right? It's friendly and accepting and wonderful.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
and smart. I mean, there's a lot of smart people.
Absolutely.
In the Disney sphere, which I enjoy. There's a lot of math.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Tater water fountain reviews.
Yeah, there you go. There's the Tater story.
I'll have a book out. You can buy that. It'll give detail it all. Well, thanks, man. Again, you're so generous with your time. We'll have you back on. I really appreciate it. Everybody, man, thank you.
I've loved chatting with you, and I will never be able to thank you enough for you're getting behind my book. That is some new level of kindness that I'm not familiar with.
I have this one, maybe I'll give this one away. That's the one I read, and then I also got an autograph copy, which is pretty cool, and that goes on my bookshelf. That one's just for me. So
there you go.
Maybe I'll pick some.
Oh, wait a minute. If you turn in, if there is a page like from the very front that says additional praise is in the interior, that's edition 2. And if there is no additional praise in it, that's edition 1. They're both the same book, but
all right. Well,
we're
going to find out live. I feel like I ordered one from Amazon because I wasn't sure if it would come in time.
It would be after
so this one I have has additional praise.
Yeah, then
the one you signed, I think, is the first version, correct?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, which is worth
That's
$1 million.
That's why it's in glass with an alarm system and lasers and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, a pleasure chatting with you. I'm there for you at any time, Sean. You've been an amazing friend, and Andrew, nice meeting you.
Cool.
I should have asked a few more questions. I don't know.
It's all right.
He's the mouse.
So he has one of the best YouTube channel names. So he builds and does race cars, and then Disney. So Mouse Gears, I just think is a perfect name.
Cars and Mickey Mouse.
Well, Andrew, you need to find a way. It was just released because I was at the. You certainly know who Bob Gurr is, but there was a whole documentary film that was made about Bob, who is all about cars, sports cars. That's about 80% of the movie. So if there's ever a way for you to stream it eventually,
did you go to that? Did you go to the premiere for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So jealous.
Yeah,
it was fun.
He's one of 2 autographs I have, Bob Gurr. I'm not an autograph guy, but I have something signed by him and then something signed by Dick Van Dyke, oddly enough, from Robin Caruso. We were supposed to meet him at a Comic-Con and in Virginia, and he didn't
He was probably like, "What movie is this?" I haven't heard of
it's
it.
funny that he couldn't make it, and the company that we'd paid to meet him refunded our money, and then said, "Hey, Dick wants to give you something. He's going to sign a picture, and you have there was 5 pictures to choose." And we chose the one with him and Walt Disney and the girl from, Friday from Robin Caruso. And so the guy said, "Hey, when Dick signed it, he said they probably wanted Walt's picture more than mine." So he actually made a comment about the thing we had signed, which was pretty cool. Because I do love Dick Van
Very
Dyke.
funny.
Who doesn't?
Oh, he's great.
Cool.
Yeah, and he's like 170 years old.
And still dancing.
And he's
Dancing
God
as they
bless
work
him.
still dancing. And Bob Kerr is older than
I know.
whatever. And he's still...
Well,
Still
I'm excited
marching.
because we will be out there this summer to see the kid. So I'll be a little north.
He'll be in the north.
But
north,
maybe I
North
should
Bay,
come down.
I guess so.
We're that
You're
close.
You're in LA.
Because
I'll take you to lunch.
that'd be awesome. That'd be really cool. All right, I'll make that happen. I'm not sure.
But you have to be
Right.
in
So,
LA.
we're going to fly in. Maybe we'll fly out of LA. We're going to go see them, and I'm hoping I get a tour of Pixar. Like just to step foot in the doors would be kind of neat. Oh, cool.
Oh, you will. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
maybe
you will.
what we can do is drive down, have lunch, check out there, and then fly home from LA. That would be a nice trip.
Yeah,
All right, now I got to plan something.
Should be right. Should be right.
All right, thank you guys so
Anyway.
much.
Thanks,
See you-
guys.
See you next week.
Thanks, guys. Awesome. Lovely to chat with you.